Strike the beam, because it's time for Nerdy for 30, the podcast where we talk about nerdy-ish movies for 30-ish minutes. My name is Kevin Bauer, a.k.a. the Critics' Choice. With me, as always, the People's Champ, Tim Keck.
Yeah, buddy, if you feel it, chase it.
If you feel it, you got to chase it. And today, we're talking about Hellboy, the original Hellboy movie from 2004. There have been a lot of pretenders now. There's a Hellboy movie coming out. I think by the time this episode releases, it will have just come out. So I think everybody will know the state of that one. There was one in 2019 that did not spark joy. But then there was this one. The original Hellboy movie from 2004, directed by Guillermo del Toro, starring Ron Perlman. Tim, what did you think of this movie?
I love this movie. I loved it when it first came out. It's a banger. It's fun. And when I say a banger, I mean a bargain bin banger. I'm talking, you go to Blockbuster, there's the $5 bin, you reach in, you pull out Hellboy, you go home, you have a pleasant time. You know, you're flipping through the channels, you land on FX, Hellboy's on. You know what? Let's ride it out. Let's see how Hellboy's doing. Let's get a little Selma Blair in there. Let's get a little Ron Perlman. Let's have a little good time in New York City or the swamps or wherever the heck they are. And it's a chill, good time. It's a great, B movie. That's, if you know what it is, if you accept where it is in the pantheon of movies, it's just nice. It's just a nice, even buzz. Kevin, what do you think about Hellboy?
Yeah, man. Bargain bin banger is a great way to put this. This is great. This is such a fun movie. Blade, that fits Blade so well, too. The first Blade that we talked about last week. This is a great time. It's a romp of sorts. This hits a lot of the right notes for me. It's got incredible practical effects. There's some supernatural stuff going on with the action. Again, just like Blade, this is a superhero movie that isn't also really that much of a superhero movie. It's also just kind of like an action, like pulp story starring this paranormal creature. And so it has that crossover appeal. What more do you want? This is awesome.
Yes, I think it is. I hesitate comparing it to Blade just in the sense that I think Blade is legit good action movie.
Oh, yeah, it is.
I think it's a tier above this.
I apologize.
I feel like this, and I think for us, I got this the same time I got Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman. And
Sure.
Those are just like, that's like a perfect double feature on both quality and vibe. You know, they're both kind of supernatural. And I don't think either of them is like so good that you got to pay attention. But also they scratch an itch and it's nice. They're bargain bin bangers. Whereas I think
I'm going to push back on. I want to push back on that. This is way better than that Van Helsing movie. I think that there's a clear class difference. They both exist in that PG-13 space. You're right in that Blade is an R. It deserves it. It does incredible things. Like Blade overall, definitely better movie. You're right there. But Hellboy, also better movie than Van Helsing. They spend a lot of time in this movie establishing Hellboy's humanity. There's character work that there's just no attention paid to in Van Helsing. Van Helsing is full of these really shitty CGI monsters. And this movie has such care put into these practical effects and these creatures.
I guess that is true. You're right. It does seem like they put a little more effort into this movie. But they're just linked in my mind, you know, like we should rewatch Hellboy or Van Helsing. I know it just completely falls apart at the end, but yeah. I love the combination of magic and history and fantasy and the real world. It always gets me. I'm such a big fan. I love hearing that Hitler only succeeded as much as he did because he had the spear that pierced the side of Christ. OK, that's the kind of stuff that I want. I want historical alterations based on fantasy and mythology. And Hellboy slides right into that in the same way that I feel like Van Helsing does. But we should move on from Van Helsing because we need to talk Hellboy. There's so much Hellboy to talk about. This movie is so crazy. It's very weird. I'm going to say a beef, kind of like, because I'm kind of circling it already, is I really, really like Hellboy when he's in the city. Once they get out of that and they're kind of in like the cave and they're doing the like fully supernatural stuff, I don't enjoy it as much. The first half of this movie, I'm really into it. And the second half, I like him running around the city. I like the people being able to spot him. I like the espionage. I mean, they're treating him like if Bigfoot worked for the government. There's all these blurry photos. Wow. He's a big secret. It's so fun. And then they just go on a fantasy adventure, and that's good too. But it doesn't excite me the same way the contrast of Hellboy in the city does. What do you think?
That's very interesting to hear. I didn't expect that because I'm a huge fan of the Hellboy comics. The Hellboy comics, for my money, best comics that are out there. Best art, best story. They're every single thing that I want. They blew me away when I first read them around the time of seeing this movie. And there's something where I still haven't read all of them. I'm taking my time very much on purpose and just moving a little bit further every October. And it's great all the way along the way. So much of those comics are very, very different from the tone that Guillermo del Toro went for. And I think that it's completely okay. We've talked a lot about the fact that we don't want adaptations to be exact copies. I don't think a comic accurate costume on screen is necessarily a good thing. I think you have to adapt to the medium you're in. And I think as an artist, you should be adapting it to something that meets your style. And Guillermo did that incredibly well. Like, it's awesome to see what he did with this version of Hellboy, which is very different from the Hellboy that you get in the comics. So in the comics, there is a lot of exploring these exotic locales and going through all these like caves and old, Eastern European towns, everything under the cover of darkness. And I love it. And it's kind of haunted and spooky. And it's very much removed from the city stuff that you see in this. So I like the destination travel that he does, but I can see where the New York City stuff would be really appealing here. It is cool. The set pieces set in the city are really neat.
It's super cool. And as someone who has no relationship with the comics, this is my only impression of Hellboy. And him with the gun, the huge gun, and he's locked in the room doing the lonely hero thing, and then they're fighting in the subway and people are freaking out, but then he saves the cats and he tickles them. I'm like, this is my Hellboy. This is my guy. And then he grows horns and gets fire on his head. And I'm like, I don't know, who is this stranger? It's not right. It's like you went on 2 great dates, and on the 3rd date they say, something absolutely, they say the horns start growing out of their head and fire shoots from the top of it. Like, that's not something I'm looking for. Sorry. I'm moving on, but it is cool. There's still fun moments. Jeffrey Tambor. Yeah. Very fun in the second half. Barely present in the first, except to go on TV as just, what is he, like the head of the FBI or something like that? Yeah. And he's just going on talk shows and just like refuting Hellboy. That's insane. And it's great comic book fun. And I love it. It's so great. But in the second half, him begrudging respect between him and Hellboy, where he shows him that you always light a cigar with a match, is just a really fun, I think, earned character moment. And those moments are really sweet and kind of carry me through the movie.
It's really cool they managed to get there over the course of one movie. I feel like seeing him in the field is the type of thing that you would normally see down the line in a franchise. And the fact that we immediately got there in the first movie is cool. So much of this movie is so Men in Black adjacent. And it feels like the equivalent of if we saw Rip Torn in the field with Agent K and Agent Agent J? Yeah. In the field with the two of them fighting shit. That'd be amazing. It's really neat that we got there over the course of this story.
Well, they needed him because they burned through so many field agents. And everyone dies. Dude. They're just throwing more wood on the fire. And these guys, I'm sorry, they do not look like professional killers. These are not military dudes. These are guys who've been sitting at their desk all day and then were asked to go on this little trip with Hellboy. These guys do not look gruff and tough. They don't know what's happening. It takes 5 minutes for their gun to charge up, which, by the way, I would have loved to see the gun at some point.
Oh, I know.
They pull out this crazy gun that like makes this amazing sound and like, I'm just going to fry him. And it's a funny bit when he thinks there's only one and then it turns out there's 2. But what about the gun, man? Chekhov's gun just lying on the ground in the sewer. And we moved on from it. But, it's fun. I think my other beef with this, my biggest beef, Kevin, speaking of agents, I hate hate, not an actor, as a character,
Mhm.
I hate
Jonathan Myers. Yeah. He's
Jonathan
the
Myers
worst.
sucks ass. He's the villain of this story. I hate him. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a wuss. He's a wimp. He's pure of heart. But then he turns around and tries to steal Hellboy's girl. Like, he's making moves on her. First off, this is a colleague at work. Second, it's your third day. Four, your whole job is to be pals with Hellboy, and you're trying to fuck his girlfriend. You're a dick. You are an asshole. And he contributes nothing. He doesn't save anybody. Hellboy saves him. He's just a dud. And the professor is like putting all of this on him. And it feels like they thought he could be a central part of the movie. And then as the movie went on, they realized this just didn't have it. And they kind of got away from him. Then he's just following Selma Blair around. And God, they're on the mission. And he's asking her if she's into him. Like, I hate him. He's a piece of shit. Hellboy should have kicked his ass right away. He should have let him get hit by a car in the street. I am actively rooting against John Myers as much as I'm rooting against Rasputin. Yeah. And honestly, I want to see what Rasputin's up to. I'm curious about that. John Myers can walk off the screen and into oncoming traffic as far as I'm concerned. Fuck that guy. I hate him.
Jonathan Myers was the biggest complaint for everybody who was a fan of the comics because he was created for the movies and he was made to be that audience surrogate. And there are so many other BPRD agents they could have used in that would have been so great. Use Kate. Like there's this woman named Kate who's wonderful. She's in a lot of the BPRD comics and she would have been such a better focal point. But I think they did want to craft this Liz Sherman love triangle with Hellboy. And that's one of the things that's so strange about this that doesn't entirely work for me about the first Hellboy movie, but I think is improved on in the second, is that they do spend so much time with Hellboy, like pining for Liz. And there's moments of it that are really fun. I just can't figure out how. I mean, clearly this was like a big part of the story that appealed to Guillermo del Toro because a lot of the movie is spent doing this. Like when he's just watching them on a date with that kid and the binoculars and stuff.
That's great.
Why? It's a really funny character detail for this version of the character, but we spend so much time on it. And it's wild when the other stuff that they're doing on these missions is so cool. I think the
I could have
problem
spent more time on the date. That was my favorite part. I loved it. I thought it was great.
The world is so cool that you want to spend more time in that world. I want to see more of these creatures. I want to do more. And I guess that's the big difference in opinion between us. You just want him to be, I think you want to see Hellboy getting groceries. You want to see this guy just existing in the real world.
I do. I want to see him. I want to see him try to catch a bus. I want to see him on the subway. It's so funny. I want to see him like volunteering at an animal shelter.
Oh my God.
You know, just having a good time.
Dude,
Hellboy's a sweetheart.
That's like something. So I think there is an opportunity. One of my dream project, if we ever got to do anything and actually stick our thumbs in the pie of Hollywood, my dream project would be to do a BPRD procedural where it's kind of a monster of the week thing like X-Files. But in the meantime, we are seeing these little glimpses because what's cool about this agency is it is employing, in addition to these like desk jockeys who never should be in the field, but are put in the field inevitably. It's employing all these people who have these weird things that have happened to them. Like there's an agent who's a were-leopard and there's an agent who is...
that's in one of the movies.
He was in the 2019 one. There's an agent named Johann Kraus who was a part of like one of those rituals designed to let people kind of like leave. I'm blanking on the name right now, but it's like what Doctor Strange does to access the astral plane, but basically just got locked out of his body. And so he's stuck as a ghost and they've created this, it looks like an old timey diving suit for him. And so he's like this dude who can still do the astral walking, let his ectoplasm out and possess people and things. But in the meantime, he's just kind of wearing this dive suit around all the time. And it'd be really fun to see him trying to get the bus. He trips, the helmet opens up, he spills out. Like there's a lot of fun to be had with these people who have these weird things just walking around out in the world.
I've always felt that there weren't enough weirdos in this movie as far as Hellboy's crew is concerned. Mm-hmm. He's got Abe. Abe's a weird fish guy. I like that everyone is like, oh, you saw Abe? Wait till you see Hellboy. And I'm like, I don't know. Abe's pretty fucked up.
Abe's probably the weirder of the two, honestly.
Abe's kind of a mess. He's a telepathic fish person who reads 4 books at a time, but somebody else has to turn the pages for him. He's in a tank in the office of the professor, but they're like, oh, we treat him like an equal, but he's in like a 12 by 12 tank and the water's murky. That is not a clear area. And then they feed him rotten eggs. And they feed him rotten eggs through a tube like you would get at the post office or like at the bank. Yeah, where you put the money in and suck it up. And he's like, yeah, we've got them. They're a delicacy. And they give him 2. It's like, there's a bowl of rotten eggs. My question was, how do they get the rotten eggs? Do they just take the regular eggs, like good eggs, put them in the bowl and just leave them there until they rot and then stick them in the tube and give it to this guy? And then it's like, why are you being stingy with these? Really? That office must smell like rotten, like death. That office has a disgusting odor. The professor's acting chill. That should be the only thing they're talking about. It's John Myers. If he's a real audience surrogate, he should be like, why does it smell like ass in here? And the professor's like, actually, it's a delicacy. and Abe is like, turn the page. And then they're like, but Hellboy's really going to freak you out. And I'm like, I don't know. At least I've heard about Hellboy. Mm-hmm. I've seen pictures. They're blurry, but he has a comic book. You know, it's not blowing my mind that Hellboy exists as a guy, but Abe is just opens up a whole world. What's on the bottom of the ocean? I have so many questions. I have so many more questions about Abe than I do about Hellboy. It's not even close. And then he meets Hellboy, and I love the Babe Ruth thing is so funny in this to me because they've got this professor. He meets Hellboy as a kid. He feeds him a Babe Ruth, which is fun. He does the thing where he takes a bite to prove that it's something you're supposed to eat. He eats one. Then he just pulls out a second Babe Ruth. And this guy was just in war. They were shooting at each other. He almost died. He gets like knocked down and blown up. And this guy's just packing. He doesn't have a gun. He's packing multiple Babe Ruths, though, just in case. And then when John Myers, after seeing Abe, is going to meet Hellboy, they give him, I think the professor gives him 2 Babe Ruths as but it's so insulting. Like, if you're Hellboy, are you like, well, I got to trust this guy now. He gave me Babe Ruths. He treats them. He doesn't treat Abe like his kid. Hellboy is his son, but he locks him in a vault and he treats him like he is just an animal to be won over with treats. Oh, your dog doesn't like me. Well, I bought him a rawhide bone to chew on. Maybe I can earn his trust that way. It's very weird, the relationships between all these guys and the way he's treated. And it's also not enough. It's just Abe, it's Hellboy, and Selma Blair, who can light stuff on fire. And I'm thinking there's got to be more to this agency. There's a whole agency. It's just these 3. Where'd you get Abe?
So much more.
Head back there. Dig around. There's got to be more like that. He can't be the only one. You found it. You didn't even go to hell to find him. You just I don't know. They went to, where were they? They went to a sewer and he was living there having a great time. Ask him if he has any friends. I mean, they probably don't give a shit what he thinks about anything other than, flashbacks to what objects were doing, 2 days ago. But
it's a thrilling stuff, dude. The Babe Ruth thing, they treat him. It's like if the cops had to send Coco the gorilla on patrol. Yes. Like, imagine if Coco had a beat. I mean, God, we do the best we can. We really try to keep her under control, but at the end of the day, it's a gorilla with a gun. So, man, there's so many more people that are fun. There's one of my favorites is Roger the Homunculus. It's just a homunculus, just a body that was created, an enchanted body that was created. And he comes to life and then he just kind of tries to do his best. The incident that, I don't want to spoil too much if you do read, but the incident that creates Roger also kind of puts Liz in a vegetative state for a while. So it's like a situation where it's like everybody kind of resents him because his quote unquote birth took out one of their friends. But at the same time, this is a being that's incredibly powerful that just kind of came to life. He was born yesterday. And that's kind of the angle they play with this character, which is a blast. Like, it's I think you would really dig the BPRD line because it is just a bunch of these freaky dudes hanging out and they're doing things, they're investigating things. A lot of their stuff is more city based too. So it's like a nice opportunity to see these people interacting with each other. And it's a good vibe. This movie though, dude, it's such a fun way to go through all of these like paranormal aspects that you see haunting people in other movies where, you know, an entire Conjuring franchise movie can be based around the fact that a doll is haunted. And meanwhile, Hellboy's digging up a haunted corpse just to ask it for directions. Like, to see the way that this dude exists within the context of the paranormal universe is a fucking blast.
I love that. I would love more Constantine-esque moments from him where he's reanimating stuff. He really doesn't touch magic at all until that one moment. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of wondering where that was the rest of the time. It seems like they kind of give us, maybe there's just not enough time in this movie, but they give us a little taste of a few guys and then a little bit of magic. And then, I don't know. There are things that definitely like that were like, oh, I want more of this.
Have you seen the second one? Have you seen Golden Army?
I did see the second one. I can't remember anything about it except, the very end, I guess. But that's about it. I remember it being okay and thinking it was fun.
If you don't like the international stuff, that makes sense.
That one's just them in a fantasy world.
Yeah.
And it's cool. I'll have to rewatch it and try and look at it through that lens. And also the Hellboy costume isn't as good.
Yeah.
Hellboy looks great in this.
Oh, Hellboy
looks so good in this. And he doesn't get better. The one that they did in 2019 doesn't look better than the first one. Mm-mm. The new one coming out, I haven't seen any pictures. It's not going to look better than that one.
It looks so bad, Tim. It looks really, really bad.
This Hellboy looks badass. I can't believe they're running away from it as fast as they are. Ron Perlman, so fun, such a good choice. And I get story-wise why they have to make it that he ages slowly. But Ron Perlman then is a 50-year-old man.
Yeah.
And they're like, he's barely out of his 30s. And I was like, he looks 45 to me.
20s, my friend. Barely out of his 20s.
Well, barely out of his 20s. Yeah, he's in his early 30s. Like, no way. This guy, he's also bald. He was thinking he's like making fun of this guy's hair transplants and he's bald. He's jacked. I mean, he just looks, Hellboy looks old.
Yeah.
He looks, maybe he has an ageless quality about him, but he doesn't look like he's 31.
No. And I mean, emotional maturity wise, though, I guess he is pretty young because he is just acting like a teen boy with a crush with all the Liz Sherman stuff.
And John bringing in just bowls of chili for him.
Yeah.
Like, give me a break. This is crazy. Also, really, do you want to be a guy like that? You really want to be serving him giant bowls of chili? I mean, he's probably shitting on newspaper in the back. There's no way they got plumbing in his room. John's gonna have to go and scoop it up the next day. You're really gonna go with chili?
I can see
it's crazy.
John, you're supposed to use the corner, Hellboy. For Christ's sake, even apes know that. Pick one corner and only shit there.
The professor takes his Baby Ruth bar away.
They're doing hand signals to speak to him.
It's like he's fully sentient. He speaks very well and is very nice. Do you have any beefs or thieves for this that you want to touch on?
I mean, the easy beef is John Myers. It's just he is so milquetoast. He's like a wet Matthew Broderick. Just like I feel like I can't explain that. He just seems like a damp Matthew Broderick to me. Like Matthew Broderick, who was out in the beginning of a rainstorm, and now you got to deal with him. Really didn't like that at all.
Dry Matthew Broderick was hard to swallow. Just wait till he's wet.
Wait till he's wet, my friend. There's a reason they keep him dry in those movies. Yeah, I really love. You know, like I said, I love the international stuff a lot. That's where it takes off for me, because that's something where people aren't really making these adventure movies anymore. Like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny wasn't a great movie, but it scratched an itch that nobody else really seems to be interested in scratching, of going and exploring a tomb somewhere. Like, I need tombs to get explored, Tim. That's a part of my identity that I need out there.
Yeah, but now that's going the way of a Jumanji, or what was the movie that The Rock did with Gal Gadot and Ryan Reynolds, where they're cave searching. Like, it seems like it's kind of slotted into this tier of Netflix movie.
Yeah, Uncharted.
Yeah, for whatever reason, doesn't seem as charming as this is.
No, I mean, I'll tell you one easy one. It's got to be Nazis as the villain. That's the thing. I think that's a huge beef, is just like you having Nazi villains tied to occult desires, that just straight up also Indiana Jones. And it's awesome because there is a degree of historical accuracy in it, which is so fun. Like the fact that Hitler really believed in that stuff, and then it has led to these things where you can do so many things, like the movie. Shit, what was the one with Wyatt Russell? Overlord, I think, the actual like Nazi zombie movie, where the whole thing is he has to go raid this bunker that's full of zombies because the Nazis got involved in some shit they shouldn't have. I mean, look, the Nazis got involved in a lot of shit they actually shouldn't have, but
yeah, you're saying some pretty pro-Nazi rhetoric.
Yeah,
right now. They're incredible in this movie. Gosh, more Nazis in Hellboy. That would have been great.
All of this. I'm saying that they're perfect villains for this kind of stuff because they're such a clear-cut evil. They are the most easily understood evil possible. So it makes them like a really easy, especially it's so funny to have a hero who is a literal devil. And the evil in the movie is the Nazis. It's a blast.
It's nice to have just a pure bad guy.
Yeah.
And if you see a bunch of Nazis doing something, you're just like Red Skull. You're just like, this is a bad guy.
It's a bad fucking guy.
There's no saving him. There's no redemption. This guy is bad. And I want Captain America to punch him in the face.
Yeah.
You get that feeling immediately. And Rasputin is weird and very interesting. I thought it was very easy to bring Rasputin back. It seems like it's going to be a whole thing. He blesses his girlfriend with immortality and eternal youth, and then they just wander through the ice, find him, kill a guy, and he's back. It seems like it's there's no chanting, there's no scriptures being read. They just kill a guy, he bleeds on the ground, and Rasputin just rises up.
Yep.
Easy peasy. Why couldn't they have done that in a year? It didn't take them that long. How could it possibly have taken them that long to bring Rasputin back? 60 years.
Crazy. And also the clockwork guy, he's just alive the entire time too. Interesting that they didn't try to do any kind of like blood sand stuff like they did. I'm blanking on his name, but I always got him confused anyway because he reminded me so much of Voldo in the Soul Calibur 2 game. I was like, this is the same guy.
Yeah, he's a great bad guy, just like a soulless robot thing. And the assassin stuff's cool. It's so funny when he's like crawling into the headquarters and then the woman's just there already. Yeah. It's like, why did we watch this guy ninja crawl into this thing? He's being all sneaky, and this other woman just walked in the front door, I guess. It's weird. Speaking of that, I did kind of want to pick your brain on the professor dying. Mm-hmm. He is killed by these guys, but he is also already dying.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe as a technique in a script, is that a way to make his death more palpable or more PG-13? Or when he is killed, it doesn't feel gutting the way it could in another movie, but maybe that's just because we know he was already on his way out. It seems like a weird thing to talk about. We wouldn't talk about that way about a real person, but from a story perspective,
no, I think you're right.
It's interesting because why else would he be dying?
See, that's
What's the purpose of him dying if they're going to kill him?
Yeah, I mean, that's an opportunity for them to do something really cool with his death and have him motivate the rest of the characters with his death because he knows he's already dying. So kind of like Coulson dying in the Avengers, and that ends up being the thing that rallies them as the Avengers in the first place. Like if Coulson knew that he only had 2 weeks to live and he was like, oh, you know what would really light this shit on fire is if I sacrifice myself. Nobody knows I have 2 weeks to live. Like I could just get Loki to kill me and that would really fire them up and start the Avengers. So I wish he hadn't told people, and I wish they would have gone that route with it. Because you're right, it is so strange. They undercut that entire thing.
It made me think of Dumbledore, because Dumbledore in the Harry Potter books is killed, and that's devastating. People were, I personally, it was a devastating blow.
Oh yeah.
And then in the later books, we find out, well, he only had a year to live, tops. And it kind of undercuts it, but it adds a different tone, and it somehow makes him dying feel noble instead of tragic.
Yeah.
Right. Like he was going to die anyway, but he chose to go out this way. Like he made a choice. He took control of his destiny when it was going to be slipping away from him no matter what. I just think that's an interesting character choice. I don't know. It's interesting they chose to do that with this guy. And maybe they try to make him look a little braver after being a real weirdo. I don't know. The professor's a strange guy, but I do get a little bit of this is a noble sacrifice he's making, I guess. I don't know.
The professor is a strange guy. The whole thing in the very beginning when Hellboy is like manifested on Earth and he's like, no, it's not an ape. It's like, I don't know, dude. I think there's no way that he could have known that would be a good creature. I guess it looked innocent, but still, I don't know if, let's see. Oh boy, getting an analogy going. If like a baby violent animal showed up, like, yeah, I'm going to save the baby violent animal, but I'm not going to be like, you know what? I'm going to keep it though.
But it's like if you'd never heard of a grizzly bear before and a baby grizzly bear shows up, right? He has no concept for what this can be. We've seen Alien, where something just latches to your face and lays eggs in you. Hellboy could be doing that. You have no idea, but he's the educated one. And the soldiers are the savages who just want to kill it. Mm-hmm. So he's, bringing out his Babe Ruths. I do like the touch of that there is a soldier following him around and they just got the like schlubbiest dude to follow him around at the end. Like none of the soldiers look like soldiers in this, I think, in any part. Mm-hmm. The captain at the beginning sounds like Harrison Ford, I think. For a second, I was like, oh my gosh, did they get Harrison Ford for this? When he's barking orders and talking about stuff. And then they get the schlubby one to just like follow him around. The guy who looks like he's just left his cubicle. And he's like, wow, what do you think all this is, Professor? Yeah. Whoa, oh my God, it's an ape. All that stuff. And it's just, there's a lot of little things in that just make this a charming movie to revisit, Kevin. Yeah, this is a nice one. Listener, what did you think? Is Hellboy bargain bin? What was the thing? Bargain bin banger? Bargain bin banger.
Is Hellboy bargain bin banger? Let us know. Send us an email, nerdyfor30@gmail.com. We'll read it on the show. We'll be back here again next week. I think we're doing Smile 2 next week, so that'll be fun. That'll be pretty interesting to see. Ooh. We'll see you then. Until then, stay nerdy, everybody. Bye.
Stay nerdy. Bye.